There's just so much.
You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on. It's with a heavy heart today that we heard Jock Zonfrillo, world-famous chef and MasterChef judge, has died unexpectedly at the age of just 46. When he came in for this interview with me just 18 months ago that we wanted to replay for you today, I can't say that I knew a lot about him or his work. I hadn't watched his seasons of MasterChef, and I'm not a big foodie. But by the time we both walked out of the studio an hour later, we were fast friends. I loved him. I just loved him. And a couple of weeks later, Jock and his wife Lauren and daughter Ava, one of his 3 daughters, came to my house for dinner with my husband and I. And we ordered Japanese takeaway because how on earth do you cook for a world-famous chef? My God, how intimidating. And he brought dessert. He made dessert in my kitchen as we watched. It was the most incredible chocolate souffle that I've ever eaten. And we sat together around the fire and talked really late into the night about his life. Jock has had an incredible life. He had an incredible life, and he had loads of stories to tell, some of which you will hear in this episode. To his family, Lauren, who you will hear him talk about so movingly, my God, they were just so into each other. His daughters, Ava and Sophia, who he loved so dearly, and 2-year-old Isla and 5-year-old little Alfie. Our hearts are with all of you, and we are so, so sorry for the loss of someone who loved so fiercely and who was loved so fiercely in return. From August 2021, here is my interview with Jock Zonfrillo. When he arrived at Mamamia and we sat down in the podcast studio, I asked him what he was holding, and he pulled out this big bag of worry beads. He said that it was a tool he's been using for his anxiety. And so we started chatting, both of us with our worry beads. And as you'll hear, we really didn't stop.
I never thought I would have anxiety, let alone admit to it.
Do you think you've had it all your life?
I think I've worked my way up to it, to be honest. You know, I think I've had so many things wrong with me over the years, and I've sat in a lot of sofas and talked about it to a lot of people that know a lot more than I do. But I think anxiety is something that really sort of came in the last decade, I reckon, you know.
For some people, addiction can be a way to try to self-soothe or self-medicate from anxiety. Looking back, do you think that
maybe
had something to do with?
Maybe. I mean, it could have been. I think for me, though, addiction happened so early, you know.
You were super young. You were 15, right?
I was 15. I started smoking heroin at 15. We were smoking pot behind the bike sheds when we were at high school.
Heroin seems like quite a big thing to do at age 15. Was there a gateway drug? I mean, it seems fairly extreme.
People talk about gateway drugs. I think for us growing up in Scotland in schools, you were surrounded by drugs, right, from, say, age 10.
Really?
You know, when you
What
get
kind
into
of
high
drugs?
school. So ecstasy, speed, cocaine,
Easily
heroin,
available.
pot.
Everyone was taking them.
Yeah, so like, you know, whether it was grass or it was resin really back then, and there'd be hash every now and again, grass every now and again, but readily available. The guys would come to school at lunch breaks and you could buy whatever you want. And, you know, I mean, even when before I'd left school, we were between us buying an ecstasy and crumbling it up and having
Where did
some
everyone
each.
get the money from?
Your lunch money, you'd steal money out your dad's coin jar or whatever, you know. We had a racket going at school. I'd buy packets of cigarettes and then sell them as singles. And then we had a bit of a gambling thing going on where there was 2 games we used to play. One was Wolsey, where you get as many people as you can. And it'd be 50 pence or a pound buy-in. And then you would throw the coin up against the wall, and the closest to the wall takes all the coins. So we would graft as many people as possible to get the lunch money. And then we'd all stand against the wall, and we would practice. You know, there'd be about 4 or 5 of us that would practice, you know, after school against the same wall.
So you're an early
and
entrepreneur.
we were very, very, very good at it. And so in the morning, the thing was at the 11 o'clock break, one of us or all of us would go out and just canvas players, basically. So as come the beginning of lunchtime,
Lead
you get money off them. Yeah. And so, but you would clean up, 25 quid a go. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, there was always a bit of money kicking around.
A lot of people who've struggled with addiction and managed to get clean talk about their life before and their life after getting clean. I wanted to ask you about the inflection point between those two lives for you, because you've lived big lives before, big lives afterwards. But you were at Heathrow Airport in the bathrooms shooting up before you moved to Australia. What was your plan?
I was in that toilet and, I had the works that I'd carried around with me for such a long time.
The works? Do you mean like the things that you need?
Spoon lighter. And I didn't
paraphernalia.
The paraphernalia. And I didn't have any cotton to put in the spoon. And I picked a bit of lint off my jumper. And I remember picking a lint off my jumper and putting it in the spoon and drawing it up and thinking, this is the last shot. And it's the last shot in so many ways. It's the last shot that I'm going to inject into myself. It's the last time I'm going to have to hide what I'm doing, because I'd spent 9 years hiding it. My wife didn't even know. So,
who knew?
Well, a couple of friends that work friends, but nobody really. I was very good at hiding it. I never injected my forearms, for example. But it was also a last shot, as in I tried to get clean, once, maybe twice before, and a half-hearted attempt, to be honest. And I knew that this was the last shot because we were immigrating to Australia, and something, in my brain said, if I fuck this up now, this is it. My life's going to crumble pretty quick, because it'd been 9 years. I was ready to kick it,
Were there a lot of times during that last year when you said that to yourself, during the 9 years when you said that to yourself?
Yeah, all the time.
This is my last shot, and then it wasn't?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I was working in Cornwall before that for Sir Rocco Forti's sister, Olga Polizzi, amazing woman, incredible interior designer. And she sort of did a lot of the Forti hotels, and then she branched out and did the Tresanton Hotel by the seaside fishing village in St. Mawes in Cornwall in the West Country. Beautiful. And 30-something bedrooms, all individually done. And so I ended up getting sent there by Marco. And so that was
Marco
another
Pierre
moment.
White,
yeah,
who was your
Pierre
boss
White,
at the time.
And I thought, here's a chance to turn it around, and you get headlong into this sort of opening of somewhere, the stress, the pressure, the adrenaline, the whatever, that you just keep going. There's a couple of things with an addiction and kicking it. One, you need to want to do it. And secondly, you need the time and headspace to do it. Because if you don't, it will not work. And somebody asked an interesting question yesterday. They said, what do you think in your circumstance has helped you get over addiction? And in talking to and answering that question, I realized that as an ex-heroin addict, I've cooked certain parts of my brain. And so when Loz and I go for a sunset walk when we're on holiday somewhere, and she's like, oh my God, this is the best moment of blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's a fucking sunset. Seriously? I can't see the same beauty and joy and that height of amazingness.
Really?
So you look at something and I look at something, you look at it with great wonderment and huge excitement, and you're elevated by it and you think it's amazing. But I've fried
So
those
heroin
neurons.
does that?
Absolutely. And
so it dulls your ability to find joy and pleasure in any ways that aren't with heroin.
yeah, it's because you've reached such highs that
Nothing
that
compares
a
to it.
normal high is not high anymore. And so, part of a lot of the therapy that I've been through in my life was recognizing my behavior in doing that. So, I am aware when I go for that sunset walk with Loz and she's in a moment of bliss and I can see it written all over her face, and I'm like, this is bullshit. It's just a sunset. And then I can recognize that, catch myself, and then go, actually, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. Here's why it's beautiful. And then sort of
Talk yourself through it.
Yeah, talk myself through it. And it's not, I don't feel the same thing as she feels. And that's my fault. It's on me. You know what I mean? But I can recognize my behavior patterns, whereas before I couldn't.
What are the closest experiences you've had to reaching that similar height? Sex? Being a father? Cooking?
Yeah, I think,
This interview?
Restaurants, definitely, cooking for other people, sharing, teaching, is amazing. So the restaurant part where you've got, the day that leads up to service and the adrenaline that creates. And then you've got the service part, 6 o'clock rolls on and you're on from 6 till 11 and it's flat out. And that for me is, you're problem solving, putting fires out and all of the things that fires amazing things in your brain that a normal person would be like, this is too much for me. So that for me is like, oh, this is good. I like this. This is fun. And then the other thing that just does it for me and that puts me in a euphoric state is my children. If my eldest is 20 and my youngest is 7 months. I've got 4 kids. And, on Sunday, I put on an old tracksuit when I got up and I didn't get out of it all day. I didn't leave the house. We played Lego. We read books. I was on all fours going around the house being a horse and I had the best day of my life. I loved that, and being together with Loz and doing that together was, that for me is the ultimate, because I think I've had 2 failed marriages and easily 2 of the breakdowns that I had were post-separation, where I had this weird thing when I was young where I always wanted to be a nono. I write about
to be a nono.
Yeah, I write about
you wanted to be a grandfather?
Yeah, I wanted to be a nono, a grandfather, so Italian.
Because you're half Italian, yeah.
So and it's a weird thing because, I hadn't even had kids yet, but I've had this.
You wanted to just go straight to that stage.
My nono died as well. There's no real thing. I write about it in the book because I'm still perplexed by it, as is anyone's sofa that I've been on. And my nono died when I was pretty young. I would have been like 6, 8, something like that. But he was an amazing guy. It's the reason I wear a 3-piece suit. He would wear a 3-piece suit to go and buy a newspaper. Do you know what I mean? And he always said, look after yourself, look smart, and he'd always be wiping fluff off a school blazer or whatever. But he was a gentleman, and the way he was with us as kids, I recognised then that was different than my dad. It was different than my grandpa, my mum's dad. He was him. And I admired the way he carried himself and the way he behaved with us. There was moments of childness, there was teaching, there was a bit of everything. And I had in my head, I always want to be a nono. And so the path to that is obviously becoming a father. And then when I first got married, and I had Eva. And when that marriage fell apart, I was devastated because, I had visions of the big table with the family coming around on a Sunday and me cooking and blah, blah, blah. And it just got blown to pieces. And then it happened again. In my second marriage. And so now, much older and wiser and I think a better person, Loz and I are on this journey together and we've got 2 kids plus my last 2 and it's a different feeling,
What you described about, playing with the kids and playing Lego and stuff, that's something that a lot of parents say that they don't do. But speaking to my mum says that it's something you do with your grandkids often.
Really?
The appeal of being a grandparent versus a parent is that as a parent, you've also got life to do, you're working and doing other things. But as a grandparent, you're able to be much more present. So you're kind of like all fun, no responsibility.
No, but the present thing was the thing. So for me, as I said, sort of sitting in all these sofas. So the answer to that question goes back to therapy. And therapy for me made me realise that I was sort of OCD. I went to one therapist and they're like, I reckon you might be a bit OCD. So I'm not OCD. I don't go around flicking light switches on and off and locking doors 4 times before I go through them. Relax. And then the second therapist I went to see and said, we might do a little bit of OCD work with you. And I'm like, come on. And then the third specialist I went to was recommended by someone, immediately said, you are a high-functioning OCD with a binary outlook on life. And I was like...
Oh, speak to that. What does that mean?
Talk to me about that. And so they said, you've got binary tendencies, meaning that you've got 1s and 0s and there is no points in between. So either something is really fucking good or it's really fucking shit. And for you, anything that's in between, you cast away. And so...
That must be tricky in relationships.
It cooked my relationships is what it did. And it also it did a lot of things. It fucked up a lot of friendships. There was a perfectionism at work for me that was bred by where I worked and the chefs that taught me going back to when I was an apprentice. That seems to be a chef thing. And it's like that search for perfection constantly then leaks out to the rest of your life because it's all you know, because At that time, you were in a kitchen for 18 hours a day, 20 hours a day. There wasn't much time outside the kitchen. So, of course, the traits you have for the 18 hours a day leak out into your life. And so recognizing that, or being forced to recognize that, actually made me face a lot of my issues as a person, and of which I had plenty.
Lots of people have one failed marriage. Some people have two failed marriages. And I shouldn't say failed, because I just think that marriages sometimes end. So I'll correct myself there. When it came to you and Loz, was it her first marriage?
Third.
It was her third as well. Okay, so how did the two of you reconcile the detritus of your failed marriages and go, no, but this one?
Yeah.
This one.
So there's always a story. And Loz and I have got a story, which is I was doing a Krug event here in Sydney when I was an ambassador for Krug, and I was cooking somewhere, and one of her friends was there. She was supposed to be there, but was in Paris getting over a relationship, just as you do. And a friend introduced herself, said, hi, I'm blah, 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 and we talked, and then she disappeared, and I didn't really think anything of it. And then her friend sent her a picture of me and said, I found the perfect guy for you. He's like it. He's European, he's a cook, he's a champagne ambassador, like, what more do you need? So she said, I'll introduce you both because I got his number, and when you come back, I'll do the intro. So she forgot to do the intro, and then Loz, months later, was in a taxi going to her mum's house, and WhatsApp, how it drags photos into your album automatically. So she's going through her album, deleting all the girls' chat pics that come through, all that shit. So she delete, and came across mine. And she was like, oh, that's that guy. I might just look him up on Twitter. So she looked me up on Twitter, liked what she saw, obviously, followed me. And then I recognized her off Gruen. So I was like, oh, that's that chick off Gruen. Cool. So I followed her back, and I don't really use Twitter very much at all. Anyway, as soon as I'd followed her, she sent me a message going, hi, how you doing? Hope you don't mind following. I'm not a crazy stalker person. I just love what you're doing, And then we just started talking. And then, so that was on a Saturday night. We chatted, or it moved from Twitter to text message at some point after service on Saturday night. It went to the early hours of Sunday morning. And by then I'd said, can I take you out for dinner? And the first chat, I had the kids in the weekend. The first chance I could get to take her out was Tuesday. So I flew to Sydney on Tuesday. We met at the Pier 1 or something. Yeah. There's a bar there. We met there, and then we were going to get a water taxi over to Thompson's Bay and just have a drink. And I remember I had a whiskey because I was nervous as... and I don't know reason why. I've met hundreds of women before. Wasn't your first rodeo? Fully nervous.
Been on dates before.
So I had a whiskey, then I ordered a martini, and then I ordered another martini, thinking she's a kind of martini girl for sure. So I ordered another 2 martinis, and then she walked through the door, and then she had this hat on, and she had a flowy dress, and just the most amazing smile. And I just I've never believed in love at first sight, but I kid you not, from that second, she was it. And we started talking. Sure enough, I said, can I get you a drink? She said, martini, beautiful. I said, with a twist? And she goes, yeah, absolutely, which is what I'd ordered. And then that was it. We had a date then that went for days. It went Tuesday, Wednesday. I pushed my flight back to Friday. Then I got on a flight Friday morning because I had to do a service Friday night. And I said, hey, I don't want to get on a plane without you. And then she was like, neither do I. And so she came a couple of hours after, and then we spent the weekend in the Adelaide Hills, and we've spent very few nights apart since.
Stories that start like that often flame out quite quickly.
Jeez, don't jinx me.
No, you've had 2 babies. They usually flame out. If they're going to flame out, It's usually way before then. It's usually the guy that gets scared.
Yeah, right.
And pulls the pin.
Got it.
Because it's everything's accelerated, and then he's like, whoa, can't do this.
Well, I think
that hasn't happened with you guys.
No, and I think in answer to your question, which I've got this habit of going around the bend talking about stories.
No, I like it, yeah.
So at the end, Loz and I were really honest with each other. We're like, I had all the baggage. She had all the baggage. It's like, hey, we've got all this Samsonite luggage. At least it's Samsonite. It's good. good
How
quality.
much younger than you is she? Is she much younger than you?
No, she's 1980, so there's 4 years, 3 and a bit years between us.
Okay. So
But-
she's not much younger, but she didn't have children from her previous marriages.
No, so there's no kids there. But we both immediately went to the place which was, here's what I don't want in a relationship, and here's what I don't want for the future. And
What didn't you want?
I didn't want not to have kids. I didn't want to have a relationship where I wasn't present and understanding and loving, and I didn't want to feel as if I had to lie about something, to be good in a relationship, which happens.
Do you mean you wanted to be able to show up with your whole self?
Yeah. It's like there are shit bits about me, and there are plenty. And there's a whole history of shit, and I don't want to hide it, and that was the whole thing with the drugs and whatever. Anyway, we spent the next, couple of weeks pouring our hearts out and just going, it's all on the table. This is it. And so we can make a choice to move on with this or not. So
How long after that did you get married?
Well, we bought a house together 6 months later. And Loz was talking about freezing her eggs as part of putting our cards on the table. She was talking about freezing her eggs one day. And I said, how about you don't freeze your eggs and we just try and have a baby? And then we bought the house, and then she fell pregnant with Alfie. We tried, and we were getting nowhere, so we did IVF. And IVF, I've got a lot of mates that have had a real tough time with IVF, and so I think we were both pretty nervous with that. And we did a round. We got 14 eggs. There was one genetically perfect, and I was in the Faroe Islands when she got a call to say you need to get in hospital now because there's a problem. And I was in the Faroe Islands out of reception because we were a couple of months away, and we're like, it's still safe. You know what I mean? A couple of months out.
That's when she was 7 months pregnant.
Yeah.
What was the problem?
Only a third of her placenta was working. And so it got to a certain point where Alfie just wasn't growing. He was just tiny. So he was born at 1.2 kilos, and as all babies do, they lose weight. So
Could you get back there?
He went down. Yeah, I managed to get back in time. He went down to 937 grams. And I remember one of the doctors in there looking, you obviously knew who I was, and he goes, you cook bigger steaks than this, wouldn't you? And I'm like, mate, not
the time.
Not a good fucking time.
Too soon.
Definitely don't say it when she's around.
Yeah, too soon.
And I think Loz was just in a state of, we'd gone through the news he had a club foot, and we thought that was the end of the world. And then this had happened, and it was like, holy shit.
So a club foot is when one foot's turned in?
Yeah,
So it needs corrective surgery
or what? Surgery. So it means as soon as they come out, they're in a cast, and then the cast comes off, they clip the tendon, and then you've got to go and put some braces for, till they're 4, essentially. Which we thought was the end of the world. But actually, it got explained to us, this is perfectly normal. Procedures worldwide, it's normalised, all good. Don't worry about it. I'm like, yeah, okay. But Loz's first child, I was like, what a shit start. You can't be in a bath with your baby because they've got a cast on.
It's not how you imagine it.
Do you know what I mean? No, totally.
No.
And so then when obviously he was properly preemie, it was just one of those situations where we couldn't touch him straight away, and we couldn't hold him, and his weight plummeted, and I was petrified that we were going to lose him. It was horrible.
How did you both support each other through that?
We just held each other non-stop. Physically and mentally, we are stronger together. There is no question about it. I can't imagine a life without Loz. But also just the strength that she's got as a businesswoman and personally and as a mother is phenomenal. She had a marketing agency for 17, 19 years or something like that. It's like no mean feat. So she's strong, and I knew she was strong. But you need to be a different kind of strong to deal with what could happen. Do you know what I mean? And so I was just there. I shelved the restaurant. I shelved everything just to be, I'm lucky that, I wasn't working for someone else. I could do that. I could just shelve it all and say to my team, hey, I'm going through some shit. You need to get on with it.
How long till Alfie could come home?
5 weeks.
And when you got him home, did it take a long time to lose that fear?
No, I don't think it did. I think when we were home, I think the gravity of what had happened started to sink in. That it's like, Jesus, we really could have lost him for Loz, where I was like, I feel that every day. And so her...
Welcome to anxiety.
Yeah, her version of that was a bit different than mine. But at the same time, it was super hard for her not because it wasn't the experience of being a first mother that she'd imagined at all. And you can imagine coming home and, your baby's still got a cast on and you can't change clothes normally. You can't bath them. You can't, there's this whole thing, right?
So
it's not normal.
Yeah.
And so
It's
that
not the
was
Instagram kind of image that people put across, is
No,
it?
and not that we were ever looking for an Instagram life, but I think I wanted, having had 2 kids before, I wanted Loz
for her.
I just wanted her to have the best experience, and it wasn't, but it didn't matter in the end. And we had Isla 7 months ago, and that was a normal
Corrective
experience.
experience,
Correct.
yeah.
It was a normal pregnancy with no issues. Isla was born at a normal weight, and
What a relief. What's the relationship like between Ava and you have another daughter, Sophia?
Yeah.
And Lauren?
So Loz is, for me, she's always been someone I look up to, and I think it's one of the reasons our relationships probably work so well is she's not just an equal, she's someone that I look up to, and as a person, as a business person, and now as a mother. And Ava adores her for the same reasons, because she can see who she is as someone on television, as a businesswoman, as a mother, as a friend. Ava knows that Loz could never be a mum, but that doesn't matter. She's such a strong figure in Ava's life. And I think Ava is stronger because of it. And I think, years gone by, I had to sit Ava down when she was 12, 13 years old, and there's a journalist had done some actual journalism and spoke to people that I used to work with and Marco and blah, 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 found out I was a heroin addict. And so he sent me an email and said, I just want to fact check a couple of things after speaking to these 8 people. And I was like, what? And then I kept reading the email and I was just filled with dread because nobody knew. And then,
Were you very ashamed?
Yeah, totally. Just ashamed, embarrassed, and guilty. I felt guilty.
Guilty about what?
Just having hidden it. I hid it from my first wife. It's no surprise that marriage ended.
Was
really.
that how she found out?
No, that was because we split up when Ava was 14 months. So we'd been back in Australia and I'd kicked it nearly 2 years by the time that had happened. But
So you kicked it without her even knowing that you were an addict?
Yeah, so I pretended that I caught a bug on the plane. And so when we moved back...
after that last shot that really was your last shot at Heathrow.
Yeah. And I pretended I'd caught a nasty bug on the plane, and we were staying with her mum in Daceyville. And I just didn't leave bed for
You went cold
10
turkey.
days. Yeah, totally went cold turkey.
That's quite dangerous from what I understand.
It is, but it's also, what do you do? If you've had how do you start to unpick something that you've had for that long? Do you know what I mean? It's just,
So she never knew?
No, she never knew. And that journalist sort of reading that email and just going, yeah, so, we want to blah, blah, blah. I want to fact check a few things, print deadline in 3 days. I'm like, what? So 2 things. One, I've got to speak to my mum.
Oh, your mum.
And then the second thing is I've got to speak to my girls, which was just I've come up against a lot of things in my life and people. There's been a lot of shit, but nothing can compare to have a conversation with your daughter like that.
What did you say?
I apologised, and I just talked about it. I mean, I had to tell her the facts, as in what's in the article, because that's what people at school talk about, that's what teachers probably talk about. But then, obviously, 12, 13-year-old have got questions, right? So the questions started happening, and it's like, well, what is it? How do you take it? Is that a pill? Is it? It's like, no, it's a powder. So what do you do with the powder? It's like you have to put it in a spoon and put liquid in it and cook it and put it in a syringe and then you inject.
And that's a
she's like,
conversation you never
my
thought you'd be
fucking God.
having.
No, but it's also just, it's embarrassing. It's
Yeah.
and that's where I talk about the guilt.
Yeah.
The guilt of the guilt of doing that. And even for my mum, it's like, I remember that conversation with mum, and my mum sort of saying to me, she goes, well, I knew you were messing around or whatever, but I didn't really know you were taking drugs. It's like, Mum, I left school early and I went to Turnberry and started working as an apprentice when I was 15. So I wasn't living at home anymore. How do you know what I was doing? Like, you would never know. And it's
Because
not
she felt bad.
Yeah, and it's not your fault.
Yeah,
like,
of
it's
course.
my fault. Like, I did this.
Yeah.
You know, it was me. And I'm forever sorry that I bring shame on my mother and my dad and the rest of my family for doing what I did. And, you know, there's no question. My mum fucking hates it. You know, she hates that every time she picks up a paper, there is ex-heroin addict, blah, blah, blah. Because it was forevermore that. That's what it was. And that was always my sort of fear about it, really. And it happened.
I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter with Jock Zonfrillo. So, MasterChef and the food, do you eat everything that you try?
All day long, and I eat utter shit. So I eat fried chicken all the time. You know, I eat all the fatty stuff, sweets and fizzy drinks, and, you know, it's ridiculous. Plus, I'll taste 24 dishes, you know, and then we'll break, and I'll eat fried chicken at lunchtime, and then I'll go home and have dinner with
How do you do that? Like, all the tasting of the food? Do you spit it into a bucket?
No, I eat it. That's the thing.
But don't you feel sick?
No, not at all. I'm like a bottomless pit.
But what about what about Melissa and
They
like,
struggle.
Yeah.
They struggle. And, you know, for me, though, it's almost like insatiable, you know. So I've got a weird thing. One, I can eat a stupid amount of food and not feel satisfied. And the second thing is I've never had a hangover in my life.
Oh, wow.
So I eat a lot. So I'm
You've got
like
some
custom designed for MasterChef.
Tricky
really.
metabolism
Weird.
situation.
It's either
going
that or
on
a couple
there.
of tapeworms. It's one
Yeah,
of the
that
could
possibly.
be.
They're very effective.
I don't know about that. I mean, I might have picked one up when I was filming Nomad Chef in Ethiopia or Belize or Peru or the Amazon or whatever.
But I mean, in terms of what women have to deal with, you've seen that up close with Melissa and the shit that she's copped.
Yep. And I just don't stand for it. I will not stand. I don't stand for it in my own house. And
You stood up for her, didn't you?
Yeah, totally. I was just fucking sick of it. It was like,
Yeah.
why do people have to be like that? Like, what is it? And why do you think it's okay to send that shit to me as well? What do you think? I'm going to support you? Like, no, I'm going to hang you out to fucking dry. And that's it. And that's what I did. And it stopped. I did not get one more message like that after I did that. And it was, you know, it just, I felt so, I didn't feel sorry because it's not the word. I just felt a sense of shame on behalf of a lot of people for Melissa. It was just like, this is fucked. It's 2020 was, you know, like, what's going on? What's going on inside people's heads? Also, you live in Australia. Like, what? When did you get here? When did your family get here? Like, don't even start me talking about the rest of it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, mate, yeah. So and I think it's got better. And I think, like anybody, Andy, Mel, and I are stronger together. You know, and for a whole number of reasons, vice versa. You know, her support with me through the Australian stuff, for example, and Andy as well. Like, when we had to close the restaurant during COVID, I flew back to Rana to do the final service in Adelaide, and Andy flew back with me just to do that final, because he knew, like, we put everything into that restaurant, and he knew how much it meant to our staff at the time. And like him, you know, we didn't know whether we were going to be closed for a month, a week, or whatever. But, you know, he also knew that for us, that the cash flow in the restaurant was tight. At that end of the restaurant, like, you run out of money when you're at that end pretty quick, because you're carrying a lot of staff, you're carrying a lot of wine stock and all the rest of it. So, yeah, we're like all people, you're stronger together. And I think with stuff like that, with what happened with Mel, with that guy, and just the casual stuff, like, I've got a zero
casual
tolerance. I've got
misogyny,
a
casual
zero
racism.
tolerance for that shit, whether it's male or whether it's an Indigenous something or whether it's a woman or I just, yeah.
You didn't start cooking to become famous or to become a celebrity or to go on TV. You talked about in the lead up to MasterChef and on the first day you were anxious and you needed your worry beads. What were you worried about? I mean, I know I suffer anxiety too. I know it's often not a tangible particular thing, but was there a thing?
Look, I think it's a real working class problem to arrive somewhere and think that you're not good enough, you know? And for me, I've done that my entire life. For every job I've got, I've felt like I wasn't good enough to be there. And MasterChef, honestly, was like there's 100 people on set, and all I could think of, oh, great, there's 100 people waiting for me to fuck up and stammer my way through, you know, an introduction or, you know, and they're just going to be huffing and puffing and sighing and going, where's Gary, Matt and George, you know? Come back, all is forgiven.
Big shoes to fill.
It wasn't so much filling his shoes, it was more, everyone's looking at you. It's like, that's, you know, they're filming you.
What was the process of getting that job? I imagine you had to do screen tests and chemistry tests. No?
No, I didn't. Anyway, I'd been in the show a few times, obviously as a guest judge, so I think they probably knew what they were getting with me. And
did you feel the same way when you were there as a guest judge?
Yeah, totally. The first time I went there, I thought I was getting stitched up because I said, I don't want to do it unless I can, you know, there's some kind of Indigenous ingredients and, you know, I said I'm just not doing it otherwise. And so they had agreed to do that. And I think Kylie Kwong was a mentor at that time. And I brought all these ingredients and Kylie was just like, she wasn't using the ingredients at that time. And she was like, wow, what's this? I've never seen Dorigo pepper before. What's this? What's that? What's that? And it was great, you know, sharing that with Kylie. And then, but I thought, I'm going to get stitched here because there was versus a contestant. And all I thought was I'm going to get stitched. So I did nothing for the entire cook. You'll see, like, if you go back and watch that one, I literally did nothing for 40 minutes and then...
Because I imagine cooking
spent 5
in a
minutes
kitchen is very different to cooking on television.
It is.
Is it boring?
Television?
Yeah, there's a lot of waiting, isn't there, in my experience of it?
There is. There's the hurry up and wait.
Hurry up and wait and reshooting and just getting something from another angle.
Stand by. You know, but in saying that, the kitchen runs very fluid in MasterChef. The cook is real time. So there is a process, and during the in between times of the process, we're like, you know, checking stuff out. We'll check the dishes that they cook 7-8 times along the way. We check it as soon as they finish, so we know if it's crispy.
So you're not like in your fancy trailer, like, you know, looking at your
hardly
phone.
ever in there. So I thought that I would be, because I thought there'd be all this time and I'd be able to do other stuff, and it's just not like that. As soon as you stop filming, you need to do something else, you know, whether it's to understand something that's been like a new dish, a new curry that I've never seen before, for example, and it's like, right, let's start researching that. Where's it come from?
And it takes 6 months to shoot a season.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been doing some light stalking of Loz, your wife, and she likes you a lot. She thinks you're super hot. Like, a lot. Like, it was really interesting. She doesn't hide that. Not that she should, but, like, she doesn't play it cool. And you don't play it cool about her either, which is because I've stalked you on Insta too, which I find really delightful, really, as a couple. You've been together a number of years. How have you both made this transition to you know, being the star of a primetime show, as someone who didn't make a career of being an actor or a TV presenter or a pop star when you kind of know that that's part of the gig? How have you both adapted to that? Like, do women crack onto you? Do people stop you? I imagine people stop you on the street all the time. Yeah,
there's a bit of that, and there's a lot of filthy DMs and, you know, tits and asses and lingerie and whatnot.
Stop it.
It's a thing.
How do you deal with that, and how does Loz deal with that?
So I do the content for social media, but I don't post it or do it, right? So one of the things that Loz and we have a super open relationship. So, like, my phone doesn't have a lock on it or
not open like an open relationship.
Sorry. Yes. No.
We should clarify terms.
That. Open as in we're 100% honest with each other. Yeah, exactly. So
closed yet open.
When Arana was sort of like just firing in all cylinders, you know, even pre-MasterChef, and Loz was like, we've got a bunch of advisors, if you like, very close friends who are very successful, and we often look to for advice. And they said, look, it's seldom going to work if there's two of you who are big figures in a relationship. It's just, you're going to doom. So you got to work out between yourselves which one it's going to be. And so Loz was at a stage with marketing after having that business for nearly 2 decades where she was a bit over the landscape of marketing at the time. And so we agreed that she was going to jump on and manage me. And she became a CEO of the companies with Eora and really got stuck into the business side and the bit that I'm really not that good at anyway. And when that happened, we never hid anything from each other anyway. But then you've got, like the work social media things, my social media. It's just,
People sliding into your DMs.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I don't want to have to hide that. And it's like, so we knew it was going to happen. It happened. And I think even if you look at the amount of stuff that comes through, it's like, I don't need to see it anyway. Like, I don't need to see some woman's breast from the UK or, I just, like, it's lovely and thank you and very appreciative, but I actually don't need to see that shit.
Well, it's intrusive. You didn't ask for it.
Neither does she, but we've got a full-timer that helps us with the social media stuff. Loz overlooks it, and then I'm like the last to look at it, and then I provide all the content, but it gets chopped together and posted by the girls. And so Ava's been a part of that along the process as well.
So people need to know if they're sending you inappropriate things, your daughter might be looking at them.
Or my wife.
So ladies, or your wife. So just put it away.
Yeah, put it away.
No one asked for those pictures.
Yeah, it's social media is a funny thing. When we started MasterChef, we had a sort of social media meeting and the lady sort of sat us down, all three of us, and said, Mel, you post 100 times a week. That's great. It's fantastic. Andy, you post 20 times a week. It's great. Jock, you post once every 3 weeks. I think we might need to work on that a little bit.
Step it up, Jock.
And I'm like,
step it up.
Oh man, and I find it hard because I find a lot of fakeness. And so I think if you look on, if anyone's looking at my thing, it's all real. It's like just me, and a bit of cooking and having fun and whatever. But I'm a larrikin at the end of the day, so there's always messing around, But it's social media, I think, is not. I think it's a problem that I don't think we've all grasped how much of a problem it is yet.
More kids?
We've said no at this stage.
Based on what?
Based on time and the time of our lives, and we feel really lucky to have had 2 beautiful children and. Loz is in her 40s now. I think it's one of those where we're kind of chancing our arm a little bit if we win again. And we're so happy, with our family, with our 2 kids and my 2 kids from before. And we're a happy little family unit,
I've asked you a couple of times about Sophia.
Yeah. So Sophia currently she's not in my life at the minute. So her mother and I, after we split, just didn't see eye to eye. And granted, I wasn't the best husband in that relationship. And it was a struggle, the relationship. She suffered from chronic depression. And in the end, I walked away from that relationship and carried the guilt of walking away from it because I was getting depressed. And post that, there was just this turn against dad scenario. And as I said before, that happened with Ava a little bit. But
she came back.
Yeah, she came back, and I got all the advice under the sun about, you can go to court like I did with Ava and spend, 200 grand fighting it, and then you've got a child that doesn't want to be in your company.
Yeah.
I've been there, done that. It's not a smart thing to do. And so currently it's, I'm ever hopeful that Sophia will reach out when she's ready.
Playing the long game.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's mentally and psychologically for both of us probably the right thing to do.